My name is Ryan Miller, and for the past 15 years, I've helped hundreds of people to raise millions of dollars for their funds and for their startups. If you're serious about raising money, launching your business, or taking your life to the next level, this show will give you the answers so that you too can enjoy your pursuit of making billions. Let's get into it.
Have you ever wondered how the best negotiators get past the impossible and close deals or investors of their dreams? Well, in this week's episode, I bring on my dear friend Corey Kupfer. Corey is the author of the best-selling book, Authentic Negotiating. He brings us into a masterclass on closing deals, investors, or new partnerships. Plus, you're going to want to listen all the way to the end where Corey opens up and reveals his secret sauce on his CDE and CPR methods that will win you the growth you need in your pursuit of making billions. Here we go. Hey, welcome to another episode of Making Billions. I'm your host, Ryan Miller, and today I have my dear friend and killer negotiator, Corey Kupfer. See, for 35 years, Corey has been obsessed with making deals. He's been so successful in this space that he's been featured in Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Business Insider, Fast Company, and more. He's brought his powerful methods of negotiation through his book, Authentic Negotiation, and continues to further delight people around the world through his top-rated podcast, Deal Quest podcast. So what this means is Corey is a deal making and negotiations pro. So you're going to want to hang in there all the way to the end where Corey's going to blow your mind with some of the most crucial areas of private equity, venture capital, and entrepreneurship, which is effective ways of negotiating and closing a deal, a partner, an investor. So Corey, welcome to the show, man.
Ryan, it's great to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you, man. I've been impressed with your background, your podcast, your books. I mean, you are all in on negotiation and really helping entrepreneurs. And we are certainly privileged to have a man of your caliber and experience on this show. So before we get into all the cool stuff that you're doing, and it is really cool, maybe you can walk us through a little bit about that hero's journey. Where did it start for you? How did you even get into this? And maybe some of those moments where it changed from just starting out to starting to rise to the expert you are today. So where did it start for you, Corey?
Yeah, listen, I was a low middle class kid growing up in Brooklyn, right? You know, we weren't poor. We always had food on the table and the lights stayed on, but that was about it. You know, no vacations, no eating out, none of that, paycheck to paycheck. Fortunately, my parents became more comfortable later in life, but that, that was after I was, already working. So, for me, I was fortunate. I was also not a very forward-looking kid for whatever reason. I mean, I had a bunch of my friends end up, by default going to Brooklyn College, and I don't know, I didn't come from a place where there was a lot of ambition. But fortunately, my parents were very, big on education. And only because of them, I ended up in the special law, politics, and community affairs program called LPC for short at Tilden High School in Brooklyn. And I ended up, we did mock presidential elections and visited courtrooms and jails and, that kind of stuff. And it was very cool. And I was like, out of that, I decided in high school that I wanted to be a lawyer. Of course, I really didn't know what that was. And of course, what I do as a lawyer now is totally different than I don't go near prisons or courtrooms or anything. I do deals, but that's what triggered me to want to become a lawyer. So I went into college knowing I wanted to go to law school, which is very unusual. I graduated, decently in Stony Brook, but and then went to NYU Law. And just went straight through. Was fortunate. Came out in the 80s. It was a phenomenal market. I had 17 job offers. Could have had 30. Did the big firm thing in New York City. There was something about me. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 15. I literally had a business. I used to deliver flyers door to door, like supermarket circulars. Back in the days, young folks, when there was actually printed materials that, for advertising. I used to work for somebody. So I got my own accounts, hired my friends, and had a business really doing that. So I always had this entrepreneurial bent. And after I put in about 5.5 years or so at, in the big and medium-sized law firms, I was, I didn't love working for somebody. And I sort of always, knew that I might do something different. And I ended up taking off about 4 months because I had gone straight high school, college, law school job. Like it wasn't in my mentality the way I grew up to take a year off and backpack around Europe or be a ski bum. Like that wasn't even on the menu. So I took about 4 months off. I skied 42 days at Killington, deciding really what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Should I open a different kind of business or a law firm? Like, law is what I know. 99% of what I hate about practicing law has to do with working with someone else. Hung out a shingle in 1991 and, really 1992. Had no clients because I had worked at bigger firms where, General Electric Credit Corp wasn't bringing me a $450 million leverage buyout when I hung out my shingle, right? So I had no clients whatsoever. I had applied for, I think it was 7 or 8 credit cards in addition to the couple I had already before I left. This was at a time when they didn't cross-check that that great. So, and I took cash advances down. I was paying my rent on credit cards. I ended up about $115,000 in debt before I started making money. I went from making over six figures in back in 1992, 91, which is, I mean, it's good money for a lot of people now. Back then, it was really good money. And I made $17,000 my first year and 38,000. I'm talking net, 38,000 my second year and 38,000 my third year. And by the fourth year, I was making more money than I would have at the big firms. And that was the start of my journey. And then, it went up from there for a while, but there was some bumps in the road after that as well. So,
yeah. So maybe talk about some of those bumps in the road. I mean, I know a lot of people, and especially entrepreneurs, this really resonates. So not only are you an attorney and negotiation and all these skills, but you're also an entrepreneur. You're also a founder. And that's important. And I want to highlight that Corey is also, he's been down that journey, the bumps in the road and the skinned knees and everything that entrepreneurs go through. This guy not only has the skills, but he also has the understanding. He's been there. Look, you and I have exchanged war stories offline about 2008. I mean, how did that fare for you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was interesting for me. Obviously, there was some ups and downs before that. I was in, my office was very close to the World Trade Center. So I was out of it for weeks 9/11. There was, partnership split outs before that, but nothing was like the Great Recession, right? So for me, it really hit more in 2009, right? 2008 was the start of it. We're still doing okay there for a little while, but 2009 and then was where it was early. I remember it was early 2009. I had started my own firm, and like I said, in '92. So we're 17 years into that. I'm 20 something years into practice. I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing very well. I'm like, okay, I'm set. Well, when your revenue starts going down $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a month quickly, like, not like it wasn't gradual, right? As people know, that comfort goes out pretty quickly. I had taken out a loan the year before to build, or 2 years before to build out a new office. So I had that loan to start with. Then, next thing I know, I'm like, oh, my savings going. I didn't cut quick enough, like a lot of people, because who knew like how deep and how long that was going to be. And really, I mean, to go to sort of the punchline of where I ended up sleeping on an air mattress in my office. I had a glass front office in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, with meeting space in Manhattan, but the main office was in Williamsburg. And I got to the point where I was out of cash. I had a weekend home up on a lake that was worth less than the mortgage. We were renting down in Brooklyn. Couldn't afford the rent anymore. I was getting creditors calling me, wanting money. I had clients that went out of business and didn't pay me. I had clients who were in business but couldn't pay me. Funding had dried up. There were no deals going on. All of that some of us experienced. And so, I gave up my apartment. Fortunately, I had a shower in that office. For a number of months, I'm on an air mattress, getting up early and packing it up. So when my employees come in, the ones that were left, don't see me sleeping on the air mattress. I ended up $330,000 in debt. And I was getting calls, from creditors. You don't send us a check for $18,000 tomorrow. We're going to sue you. We're going to. And, one of the things I say, I relay the story in my Authentic Negotiating book. And one of the things I say is that, I had, decades of experience negotiating deals for people, negotiating tough challenges for other people. But you're really tested when it's yourself, right? When it's a super challenging, I had done easy negotiations for myself, buying cars and houses, but when your lifestyle is on the line, when your business is on the line, when you don't know how you're going to make payroll, it really becomes a gut check on who you are. And, I had a bunch of friends who told me to declare bankruptcy. And, I really had to step back and make a decision on how I was going to handle it and who I wanted to be.
So I want, for our fans around the world, and thank you for sharing. That's a very vulnerable moment for any entrepreneur. And, you came out of that stronger and more badass, dare I say. So, any of your clients, that gives you an advantage in many ways. And I would say one of them is, number one, you know the fight that entrepreneurs have to go through because you took time in the ring and you took your licks and you did it and you understand what it takes and you came out better. And now you're able to better serve a lot of your clients where you focus on entrepreneurs, and we'll get into that in a minute. But going through that I want our fans to realize around the world that Corey knows the fight that's required. I would argue sticking to that, not declaring the bankruptcy that, some people are like, dude, just throw in the towel, right? We're using all these fight analogies and we can geek out about Rocky maybe later on. But, everybody's telling you to throw in the towel and you didn't. And on this show, and our fans that are listening understand that two of the most valuable assets in your possession are your reputation and your relationship. And for those of you who just listened to Corey's story, he understood that no amount of money, debt, or anything, it is worth the fight to maintain your reputation and your relationship in whatever sector you have. And if you can still go through the 2008 recession or any type of down market and come out the other side still with your reputation, your relationship intact, you've maintained the most valuable thing in your possession and so we can follow exactly what Corey did. So kudos to you. Thank you for sharing that story. Thank you for sharing something authentic. It's brilliant and refreshing. So thank you.
I just think there's an opportunity for everybody in the tough situations to test who we really are, right?
That's right.
And for me, it came down to honoring my word, even though legally I could have gotten out of some of those obligations, and who I wanted to be and how I could sleep at night. And I don't judge anybody else who makes a different decision. But for me, and you're right, I maintained and strengthened relationships. People saw me. I think, you got your character, your integrity, your word, your reputation, and there's nothing more important.
Absolutely. And I agree. And you and I are very aligned on that, along with many other things. So I feel like this is not going to be our last conversation, for not by a long shot. So here you are, right? You started, you did the law school, you did everything you're supposed to. You took a few spanks on the bottom a little bit during the recession. I did too. And you came out with your integrity. You came out, you held on to the two most valuable things, which is your reputation, your relationships. You come out. So here you are, you got your law firm. Maybe we talk a little bit about Kupfer and Associates and where you like to dance, because I think this is very relevant for a podcast that focuses on private equity, venture capital, and entrepreneurship. This is the guy to talk to.
Well, listen, here's the bottom line is we work with entrepreneurial companies to help them grow, right? From startup through exit. That's what we do. And we do it in terms of a lot of contract deal. So we do everything from the business setup to the equity structuring, capital structuring, helping companies, figure that stuff out, business partnerships, everything they need, all that contract and ongoing deal work, including their own M&A and doing deals to, strategic alliances and joint ventures and raising private capital. We partner with some firms who do like the securities offering stuff. We don't do that anymore, but we do angel investor rounds and, private capital raises and that kind of stuff. And then we eventually to exit. We call, my tagline, but it's not just a tagline. It's really who we are. For years has been strategists, negotiators, and deal makers. And that's what's different for us than a lot of other attorneys is, and you alluded to it. The fact that I was an entrepreneur, the fact that I've been through this stuff. Most attorneys, and I don't want to put down they're dedicated people, they're smart people, whatever. But there's a difference between being an entrepreneur, between being a business owner, between others. I've had other businesses. I understand how business people think, and one of the things that distinguishes us is that many attorneys have never really done deals for themselves, and they don't understand you got to take some risk, and there's some opportunity factor. Yes, you want to help people mitigate risk. That's what we're trained to do as lawyers. We only study stuff in law school that is all about everything that went bad. So we're over-indexed on risk often, but what great attorneys can do is mitigate that risk, make sure the risk is knowing, do whatever you can on that side, but effectively balance that against the risk that should be taken to be successfully grow a business, because you can't grow it without taking some risk.
I always have a joke, so forgive me. There's the no end supply lawyer jokes, but I always say, in my opinion, accountants and lawyers, sometimes they're better engine on the deal, and sometimes they're a better caboose on the deal. But you'd never do one without an attorney and an accountant. So where they find, some are great at leading a deal, some are good at just wrapping it up for you and making sure it's all done. But regardless, this is a very important factor in any kind of deal, whether that's maybe you're selling, maybe you're entering, maybe you're buying a business, maybe you're starting a business. Either way, these kinds of people who not only understand the law, understand specific to where you focus, but also understand it personally at a very deep level that you've just explained, to say, not only do I understand the law, but I understand what you're going through and what you might go through, and we're with you every step of the way, either as an engine or a caboose. However we can serve you, that's what we're here to do. Yeah. So that being said, so now with all of this experience and all of these different things and helping some of your clients. Where did this idea come from? How did the book play into everything else that you're offering?
Yeah. So, over the 20 whatever, years that I was practicing and helping people and negotiating pretty much every day, right? I came up with my own sort of approach and philosophy and way to negotiate that, was very successful. I've gotten great results. And people would always say, "Oh, how did you, do that?" And then it was really my wife who said to me, and the way she said it, I was looking at it like a little bit. She said, you really got to write a book on this stuff. You have mastery in it, and you don't want this information to die with you. I was like, "Are you planning on? Like, did you just up the insurance on me or something? Like, are you planning on knocking me off? I'm not planning on going anywhere too soon." But she meant it really positively. She was like, "Listen, you really have something to offer." And also it's that entrepreneur in me, right? I've had other businesses. I've done real estate investment funds, so I've been an investor. I raised capital. I put money together myself. So I'm always looking for that next challenge. And earlier in my career, I would go off and do some stuff and then lose focus, on the main business, and then have to go, "Oh, wait, I got to go back in there." And by the time I wrote the book, I got into a place where I'd built the right team. I had, phenomenal other attorneys and staff and people working for me. And I said, "Okay, now, I'm always looking for that next challenge, right? It's that entrepreneurial mindset, right?" So writing a book was, was the thing. Negotiating was clearly a topic. I've been doing speaking on it already. And then that comment from my wife really, really triggered it. So, I really, I took what had been the talks and workshops I've been doing on negotiating and thought that was the start for the book. And we launched it. I work with a hybrid publisher. We got it, to be an Amazon bestseller. But frankly, people, I don't want to give any misimpressions. Most people you have to understand the model on anything you do, right, in business, whether it's the book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's whatever. And most people don't. Most people write a book, they don't understand that 98% of the books are going to sell less than 300 copies, right? That's just what happens. So for me, it had to be integrated. And why was I doing it? Well, I want to do more speaking and training. I want to do more negotiating workshops. And of course, it drives business to the law firm and establishes me as a credible expert in the area. So that's what I used it for. It's done really, really well. And the phenomenal part that I love is that sometimes I get like these, this feedback, thanking me for, they read the book and then they used it in this thing and it made such a difference in their life. So, for me, I've gotten to the point in my life where service and impact for many years now has been my biggest driver. If you serve people and you have impact and give value, the money's going to come. So this and the podcast have been a couple of ways that I get to serve a broader audience than the clients I work with directly.
I love that. And so Authentic Negotiation is the title, and you wrote this book, and you're right. It would be a tragedy if something so good and valuable that can help and serve other people to rise to a higher level, if that is just never manifested and you take that to the grave. My wife's telling me the same stuff, so maybe I should write a book or something. But, until then, Authentic Negotiation is the title. And how does that compare to what can our listeners expect to learn? How does that compare to the other books that are out there? Really, let's get into it, because I want to hear some of that wisdom that you're bringing into the world. Maybe you can share some of those highlights.
Sure.
So first of all, how does Authentic Negotiation compare to the other books that are out there? And then maybe we can get into some key takeaways.
Yeah. So it's Authentic Negotiating, just so people are looking for it.
Oh, thank you.
Just to clarify that. But
yes.
But so here's the difference. What a lot of the books and trainings and things out there are, there's sort of, they fall into two categories, right? And most of them are all on this sort of strategy level and this tactic level, right? If you do this, then, if they do this, you do this. There's a counter tactic to the tactic, and then a counter tactic to the counter tactic. And some of those are really honestly manipulative and bad. And if you come across any great negotiator, they're going to smell that out. They know exactly what course you took. It's not authentic. It doesn't work. Then there's some good trainings out there and good books out there that are on the tactical and strategic level that give you some really good advice. There's one that's been very, very popular recently. oh my God, I'm drawing a Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference.
Never
right?
split the difference.
He's a guy that I like on the practical, strategy level. I've had the amazing pleasure of spending time with William Ury, who was a co-author of the classic negotiating book, Getting to Yes, and founded the Harvard Project on Negotiating. So I'm not saying there's not some good work on that area, but my fundamental premise is even the good stuff, right? If you don't do the stuff I'm about to talk about, you're going to be at a major disadvantage. And that is doing the inner body of work. Because here's the thing, if you go into a negotiation from a place of scarcity or fear or ego or rigidity or any of these things, I don't care what tactics, what strategy you put on top of that, you have a problem. So the fundamental framework of authentic negotiating is CDE, right? 3 letters, CDE. The C stands for clarity. And I negotiate everything from small stuff to tens of millions of dollars, of deals, right? $100 million deals. At every level, it's amazing how most people don't do the work you need to do to get the level of clarity you should have. And what I mean by clarity is that you want to understand exactly what's acceptable to you on every important term of the deal and what's not, and why. And there's 2 levels to doing that. One is some external research. You want to know the market. What are the multiples if it's an M&A deal, right? What is the going rate of whatever, this is, how do valuations work if you're raising capital, whatever, right? What the comparables are out there. And people even sometimes skip on that, but that's the area they do more work on. But then there's the internal work. As you, as the founders, the entrepreneur, as one of the key people in the company, like, why are you even doing this deal? Like, what is important to you? What do you really, really, really care about, right? And that level of introspection and getting 100% clarity on exactly what you do want and don't want. And I have this little test, I call it my true bottom line test. It's like not a penny less, not a day more, to that level of clarity. If you don't get that, then everything else is problematic, because how do you know how to design a negotiating strategy, right? You can get all these tips on how to design a negotiating strategy, but if you don't really know what you want, what you don't want, what your bottom line is, you don't even know where to start to design a strategy. How do you know when to give, where to give, all that stuff? It all starts with that level of clarity. So that's the C. So D is the one that people struggle with a lot. All right, but it's the one that's very, very crucial. Comes after clarity. You got to get the clarity first. And the D is for detachment. And detachment, I've been since told that the Buddhists actually don't call it detachment; they call it unattachment, because detachment sort of means you don't care. I don't mean that. I mean detachment in the way they say unattachment, meaning the best negotiators I know. Right? If I'm negotiating a deal with Ryan, I should have a preference we get the deal done, or else why am I wasting my time negotiating or speaking to Ryan? However, the best negotiators in the world are equally fine if they do the deal with Ryan or they don't do the deal with Ryan, right? Because it's not a matter of, there's no attachment, right, to the deal. I mean, it's very interesting because this is a negotiating level. People who do any kind of, not only Buddhist, but any kind of, Eastern philosophy, meditative practice, or even prayer practice, whatever, will understand that the concept of being unattached to something is unbelievably powerful. If you get your clarity, then it becomes very, very easy. It's binary, right? I do the deal if I can get what I need, and I don't do the deal if I can't. And here's the thing about it that's very different. A lot of negotiating trainings will say that you need to have a walkaway point. But what they don't do, a lot of people walk away from upset, anger, ego, judgment, right? They walk away because Ryan's a jerk, because he won't agree to whatever it is, right? I'm picking on Ryan because he's my example here, right?
It tracks.
You know what I mean? Anybody, all right? But the difference with what I'm talking about with attachment is, if I walk away from a deal with Ryan, all I'm saying is that Ryan's objectives right now and my objectives don't meet. Doesn't mean anybody's a bad person. Doesn't mean anything. All it means is we're not meant to do a deal right now. And maybe we'll do a deal later. Maybe I'm meant to do a deal with someone else. Maybe I'm not meant to do a deal. And the master negotiators are able to establish, and then we'll talk about the maintaining part, that detachment. And I will tell you, if you can master that, if you don't get triggered, if you don't get your emotions involved, one of the things I talk about in the Authentic Negotiating book also is like the key reasons why negotiations fail. And they're all emotional, and largely they come down to losing your detachment, because you get angry, you get upset, you get afraid, you get, in scarcity, whatever it is. So detachment's the second, is the D. So we have clarity, detachment, and then the E is equilibrium. Let's say you've actually done the work and gotten clarity. Let's say you even walk into the negotiating session, feeling detached. But now listen, negotiation is not always easy, right? Somebody says something, they trigger you. They tell you your company's not worth half of what you think it is. They say, hey, we're not going to give you that valuation because, when we look at it, you didn't do this well, you didn't do this well, you didn't do this well, and you're like, what do you, whatever it is, right? They say something that triggers you back to your childhood. Like, I don't want to. I'm not a psychologist, but the point is, there's stuff that we get into that throws us off, and so now we lose our detachment, and if we lost that detachment, we can't connect to our clarity. So the ability to maintain that equilibrium during the negotiation, so that we can stay attached to the clarity and detachment, so we can stay connected, I should say, not attached to those things, is really the difference. And my assertion is that if you are able to do the inner body of work it takes to get clarity, detachment, and equilibrium, I don't care if you've taken a single other course on strategy and tactics, you're probably going to be better than 90% of the negotiators out there, right? Then if you apply the good strategy and tactical work on top of that, now we're talking about getting to the point of mastery.
Absolutely. You'd be a force to be reckoned with. So while we're on that topic, so thank you. So clarity, detachment, and equilibrium. What are some of those things that either you do or other master negotiators that you respect? What have you noticed are some of those practices that they do for equilibrium? Because you're right, tensions can get hot or whatever it might be, or right? You're all zen, but the other person's a bit of a prick, whatever that is. And it just can get under your skin. Like, there's a lot going on in a negotiation, and maintaining that composure, that equilibrium. What are some of those either habits or practices that you found to help you maintain your equilibrium going into a negotiation?
Yeah. So, the first thing I do with people, because everybody's different, I have a particular tool in the book we can get to talk about later that helps with that. But the first thing I always say to people is, listen, forget negotiating for a second. What is it that you do in life that gets you centered, that calms you down, that gets your head clear, that whatever, right? And for some people, that's prayer or meditation. For some people, that's exercise, running, or working out. For some people, that's, just taking time, being quiet. For some people, they're more analytical. That's, running spreadsheets or pro and con lists, or some people, call their friend or their mentor and bounce it off, right? So, you probably know what you do in other parts of your life to get yourself, like if you're thrown off or your head's going or something went bad, what you do to get yourself reconnected. So let's start with that, right? If you're somebody who his mind is always racing and you get stress and tension, but running calms you down, well, maybe you should take a run before the negotiating session, right? Or the big meeting of any type. And one of the things that is problematic for us entrepreneurs, it's part of what makes us, who we are, right? Is that we're always on the go. We stay busy. We feel like we can shoot from the hip and figure it out. And in an important negotiation, we need to pull away from those instincts, create some space, right? Do the clarity work, but then also maybe make space for that meditation session or that run or that talk with your mentor before you go into an important negotiating session. So that's my biggest tip, other than the tool I have beforehand. And then I'll give you the one, like my biggest tip for during a negotiation, is two things. One, deep breaths help, like breathing. Watch, your breathing is a very good indicator of what your state is. And then if you can't center yourself through that, listen, you can always take a break. That's the biggest thing. If you feel yourself emotion coming up, you feel yourself getting triggered and you don't think you can handle it in the moment, either through some of the tools, that I have in there or breathing or whatever it is for you, say, listen, let's take a break. I got to make a call. I got to go to the bathroom. Why don't we get some lunch? Why don't we reconvene tomorrow? Right. And then go outside and take a walk, whatever you have to do, and clear your head. That's my biggest in negotiating, tip. So I'll leave it at those two things, but we can get into the tool I talk about. The last two chapters of the book are about this specific tool that really helps folks.
That is phenomenal. So make sure that you have those, we'll say the proverbial tools in the toolbox to just keep your head on straight and not lose it a little bit, whether you got to say, let's go grab lunch or let's reconvene tomorrow, go for a run before anything. And I would argue, so, I personally love meditating, that I get a lot of value out of that. What I found is if you just start the day of or the day before, it's probably not going to do what you hope it will. But front loading that and really back when I used to compete in professional sports, one of my coaches would say, you know what, the fight is always one way before the fight is actually fought.
Yes.
And that is meaning, have you done your training? Have you stuck to the disciplines in your diet, your exercise, all of your training? What have you done leading up to that? So then when it's go time and that bell rings and the cage door closes, you're ready, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually. You're ready to actually take on and not seeing them as necessarily an opponent, but maybe just arriving at deals. So I don't want to say it is a fight. Sometimes it might be, but really what we're trying to do is arrive at those terms or those objectives that you talked about earlier on. So now that you've done these things, you're in those places, you're clear, you're setting your equilibrium, you're feeling good, right? You're saying, look, this is the foundational work. Those tactics are good, but if you don't have that foundational work, those tactics are going to throw them out the window. It's not going to work for you the way that you hope. So moving forward, maybe you can share with us another framework from your book that kind of helps give our fans a competitive advantage within negotiation.
Yeah, so I really do think this is a hugely competitive advantage. It's something that I've used personally. I've trained people on, and it could be used even outside of negotiation. And it's another 3 letters. I joke my book is about 6 letters. If you learn 6 letters, you're going to be a master negotiator, right? You have the CDE, the clarity, intention, and legal equilibrium, and then this tool is called the CPR. Okay, and this one I'm going to describe in reverse order. So the R stands for results. And this is the easiest one. And again, I'm not saying people don't skip on it, but this totally ties into the clarity conversation, right? You get clarity. So now, and you're going to write this out. The CPR you're going to write out. So you're going to write out the results you want out of, you want this valuation, you want this purchase price, you want this terms, the payment terms, whatever it is, right? You want the employees to be hired, whatever it is. All right. Yep. So I think, most entrepreneurs understand that. And if you take to heart my clarity process, you'll get your results. Now, the P and the C, though, in the CPR are the 2 key things that most people don't do. And the P stands for purpose. That's the why, right? Simon Sinek famously, wrote the book on why. It's become, and it's true in this, right? And it's one thing that I do that's very different than a lot of lawyers. Clients come to me and say, "Hey, Corey, I'm looking to raise this capital, or I'm looking to buy this company, or I'm looking to do this, distribution deal, whatever it is." And most attorneys, will be like, okay, what are the terms? I'll always ask the question, why? Not because I'm like doubting them, but I want to understand their motivation, and I want to make sure they understand their motivation. Because, listen, the only thing that's worse than not getting a deal done is doing a bad deal, and that could be way worse, right? So what's the why? And if you don't understand your why, and then obviously you want to, share that with your key professionals on the team, internally and externally. But then how do you really, you can say you want those results, but the truth is you may not really know, there's nothing underpinning that. There's no connection to what really matters to you. And again, it affects the negotiating strategy. So I give an example in the book, and I won't go into the whole story. It's actually a great story in there. But the short version is that we had a very significant team. They happen to be in the wealth management business. They manage a lot of money. I actually don't say that in the book because I wrote the book closer in time to when that was, and I always got to make sure nothing's identifiable. But now we're many years later. And they had left one of the big brokerage houses to go to a regional bank before we met them. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out. Like everything they were promised, and their clients were being adversely affected. They couldn't provide services the way they wanted to. They were losing some business. They were very frustrated. They didn't like the management. So, when they came to me, they were like, you got to get us out of this, right? We looked at their legal agreements. They had very bad legal agreements, like non-competes, non-solicits, like they didn't own their business anymore. And listen, they got millions and millions of dollars for when they came in. So they were well paid for these restrictions. But still, it wasn't good for their clients. It wasn't good for them. So, we started going through the CPR process to help to prepare them for negotiating, and then we actually did a lot of role playing with them, which is something else I do. But in any case, and I said, well, what what's your purpose? What's really underlying all these results you want? They wanted to leave. They want to be able to take their clients. They understand that they have to write a check. They got millions and millions of dollars. How much of a check they'd write back, whatever. And we went back and forth. I won't tell the story. The short version is, and this is the thing when you get to your purpose. Purpose should be a phrase or a single sentence. It resonates, right? It should be visceral with you. And when they got to their purpose, which for them was getting their freedom back, okay? Like they realized, like they wanted to get out of there. They were unhappy with that. But like for them at a fundamental level, it was a freedom thing. It was like their freedom had been taken away. They couldn't handle the clients the way they wanted to. The clients were not benefiting. They were unhappy. They were frustrated by making decisions. So, they said, we just want our freedom back. And it was like an anthem almost, So that motivated them. They got that. Okay. All right. So now you want to get your freedom back. That's your purpose. Good. Now what's the C? The C is the context. What is the context? Context means the being part of it. And again, this is where a lot of my work goes, which is different than, a lot of other work. We got to get to the being level because, and one of the things I always say about context is that it's very much like they say about culture in a company, right? They always say every company has a culture. It's either by design or by default, right? And the companies that don't do it by design have it by default. And usually a default culture is not a very good thing. Well, you always have a context. You always have a state of being, a way of being. So their context, their unstated context at that moment was, we're angry. We hate these guys. We don't trust them. They're idiots. They're right. That's the context, right? Now, they're in a bad legal situation. They have to negotiate their way out, right? Yes, we did have a plan B that involved lawsuits and all kinds of crazy stuff and blah, 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 right? But that was not a good option for anybody. Not for them, not for the other side, not for the clients, right? So they know that really it makes sense to have some sort of negotiated exit. So what I said to them is, I said, let me explain context to you, which I did. And then I said, what do you think your default context is? And we talked about all that negative stuff. And I said, what do you think the odds of getting a negotiated deal if your context going in is that we don't trust these guys, they're idiots, they're jerks, we hate them, they're trying to screw us, whatever, right? And they're like, yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, all right, good. So what does your context need to be? How do you need to go in? So they came up with several things, which included, I won't get into the whole story, but patient, right? Which is something, they were totally impatient. And yes, there was a good reason for it. Their clients were getting hurt, whatever. But the truth is, this has been going on for a while. And whether it took another couple of weeks or another few months, they'd rather have it sooner. But it could go a few months. So they had to be patient. They had to be calm. They were far from calm, right? So they had calm, patient, collaborative was the other one, which drove them they were like collaborative with these people. But they realized, wait a second. Because not only do we want to get out, but we want to have the clients to have a smooth experience. We don't want this to actually adversely affect the client. Well, if we're not collaborative, they control the files, they control the information, they can make it a mess. Okay, collaborative. Yeah. And then they realized they were missing one thing, which was, because calm, patient, collaborative was all very nice, but these guys on the other side were kind of sharks. They were tough negotiators. They were, so they said, we need something in there that's a little more strong, but they didn't want it to be aggressive or assertive because that would get too much into their anger and ego. And they came up with the word firm, because firm had none of the charge in it, but it was strong. So I just give that as an example for them. It should have nothing to do with when you do this process. This is a long process where you come to, and for me, the context could be a sentence, or I like it to be 3 or 4 words like that. But you see that the context and the purpose are short. You want to be able to memorize those. You want to be able to have that be your North Star. So now, the last thing I'll say about it before you ask me whatever you want to ask as a follow-up, you're in the negotiation, right? We're trying to maintain that clarity, detachment, and equilibrium, right? We get thrown off the equilibrium. Something gets us triggered. Here's a question you ask yourself. First of all, you should have memorized your context and your purpose. By the way, you're carrying it with you, a copy of it, so you could always take that break I talked about. If you need to, maybe you're so emotional that you're forgetting what it is, or you can't really connect it. You can always take that break, pull the paper out, and read it. But the question you ask yourself in the moment is the next thing I'm going to say or do right now, right? That jerk on the other side just got you. So is the next thing I'm going to say or do right now going to move me closer to or further from my purpose? And the example with them, is it going to help me get my freedom back? Or is it going to make it less likely? So if I go off the handle and yell at this guy, it's probably going to make it less likely. So maybe I should do something different. And then you also get to ask yourself, all right, is the next thing I'm going to say, am I holding my context? In their case, am I being calm, patient, collaborative, and firm? If the answer is no, probably not a good way to go.
Wow, that is phenomenal. So now we're doing all this inner work, man. I feel like you're my Zen Buddhist teacher here, but you're absolutely right. Is to say, look, and now that Corey has connected those dots for us on that underlying foundational stuff that maybe you don't really go too deep in other books, but Corey's methods show you to say, no, there's a whole nother layer that people aren't addressing. Like, I've been doing this for 35 years, man. Like, trust me, the inner work, working on yourself and bringing yourself into the negotiation, not just a head full of, well, if they say this, then I'm going to say that. Okay, maybe. But if you're not clear on what you want, you don't have purpose, context, clarity, all of these things, you're not clear on the result. What are you doing, man? You're just scrapping. That's not fun, right? So now you're just duking it out. You're not sure. Neither side knows what they're doing. They're all emotional, and it's just a mess. You never get what you actually want. But following those methods in authentic negotiating is following that inner work. So I absolutely love that. That is 100%. I can endorse that, and it is completely brilliant. So as we round third base, Corey, and we just wrap things up, is there anything else, if people want to work with you or get to know you or find your book or listen to your podcast, anything? I mean, you got a lot of stuff out there. So now's your chance to kind of say, if you want to find me, there's many ways. What are some things, if there's anything you want people to know, kind of final comments or just ways to connect with you, feel free to send a shout out.
Yeah, so listen, we've got a couple of websites. The hub one is just CoreyKupfer.com, CoreyKupfer.com. And from there, you can get the book, the podcast. It'll link through to the KupferLaw.com website, so you can get to the law firm. Yeah. So that's really the hub. And really all of it, whether it's, and I'm on social media, it's all at Corey Kupfer, like LinkedIn, and we do Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But all the content is really around entrepreneurship and deals and negotiating, right? How to grow your business, how to do deals. The podcast, DealQuest podcast, it was really launched because, you focus on, more on the private equity and the raising capital side, which is a kind of deal, and it's absolutely crucial. My general premise was that so many businesses, like, it's a mindset shift to become an entrepreneur, right, in the first place. But there are many, many businesses that, and maybe they do well, maybe they're struggling, maybe they want to do better, but maybe they haven't doing well, where they grow organically. They know how to do sales and marketing. They know how to get customers and clients. But there's this whole other way to grow. And if you look at the companies that have been most successful, create the most enterprise value, right, they do both. They're good at organic growth, and they're also good at deal-driven growth. And deal-driven growth could be raising capital, could be doing mergers and acquisitions, could be doing joint ventures, strategic alliances, online affiliate deals, you name it, right? Licensing. There's all kinds of deals. So what I wanted to do with the podcast was open up people's minds to say, hey, maybe there's this other way that I can grow, and we have amazing deal makers on, and I just love talking about deals and negotiating. So, so I do that. It also and I do professional speaking as well, and training and workshops. So, all of that stuff is there. And there's a lot of free material we put on social because I really, for me, like I said, I'm not going to get rich off a book. Yes, does it help my profile a little bit, but largely, a lot of the stuff we do now is just to be able to get this information out to more people because, to be able to have more impact and provide more value and service to a broader audience.
Oh, brother, that is the key. So I have interviewed a lot of professionals, highly skilled such as yourself. And one of the things, this is one of the joys, and I'm letting people, I'm opening the curtains and I'm telling you on my side of the aisle, you said the magic word, which was impact. And so what I found is people who are wildly successful are more focused on or have been more focused on the impact than the income. They never neglected the income, but they were focused on the impact. It was the impact they were trying to make, and it's the impact Corey's trying to make that keeps him up, writing books, doing podcasts. I mean, he's doing fine. Why does he keep going? It's not for the money. Although that helps, but it's for the impact. I mean, I'm totally putting words in your mouth, but I'm seeing this pattern in all high performers are so focused on impact. And as Corey alluded, sometimes that's purpose, right? So you're clear on the results. You're clear on your purpose. You have really taken the time to say, what do I want out of this? And that obviously maybe is income, but it's also impact. So thank you for sharing your wisdom. So just as we wrap things up, following clarity, detachment, equilibrium, understand, make sure when you go into a negotiation by following Corey's advice and his methodology, of course, listen to this show, but you can go out and find his book and really learn more and follow his many avenues of helping you. But CPR, results, purpose, and context. Following these things are all critical in our path. As we follow those, you too can enjoy your pursuit of making billions.
What a show. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Now, if you haven't done so already, be sure to leave a comment and review on new ideas and guests you want me to bring on for future episodes. Plus, why don't you head over to YouTube and see extra takes while you get to know our guests even better. And make sure to come back for our next episode where we dive even deeper into the people, the process, and the perspectives of both investors and founders. Until then, my friends, stay hungry, focus on your goals, and keep grinding towards your dream of making billions.